only 300 years old. How did the U.S. rise from third to world power? We know after 1991 Soviet collapse, the U.S. became the sole superpower. But by the late 19th century, America already had that potential. Before that, there were still many superpowers in the world. So how did the U.S. defeat them one by one and then rise? America's rise took advantage of timing, geography, and technology. Mid-18th century, Britain established 13 colonies in North America. These 13 colonies were the embryo of the United States. In 1773, these 13 colonies began their fight for independence. In 1759, U.S. and Spain divided most of France's colonies. But this didn't satisfy America's appetite. They needed more land. Thus, the famous Mexican-American War broke out. Mexico gained independence in 1821. Acquiring vast territories to get this land, U.S. first sent waves of immigrants. By 1829, U.S. immigrants outnumbered local Mexicans. Mexicans watched their homeland become someone else's, so they fought the U.S. But Mexico ultimately lost. In 1937, U.S. gained 1.9 million square km of land from Mexico, including Texas, California, Nevada, and more. This war made U.S. North America's hegemon, but it wasn't enough. This was history's first imperialist war, the Spanish-American War, a key battle in America's path to global dominance. By the late 19th century, the U.S. Civil War had ended. After the Civil War, the U.S. eliminated slavery, its biggest obstacle to industrial growth. Domestic industrial production entered a rapid development phase, and people's living standards gradually improved. By 1894, the U.S. economy surpassed Britain's, ranking first globally. The economy was booming, but Europe remained the world center, so the U.S. expanded overseas, but to compete, it needed a weaker opponent. Britain and France were too strong, so they chose Spain, an old colonial power. Spain was struggling with independence wars in Cuba and the Philippines. These two had been Spanish colonies for over 300 years. Their desire for independence grew stronger, and the U.S. saw an opportunity. So on February 15, 1898, the U.S. found a pretext. They sent a warship to Cuba, which was blown up in the harbor. The U.S. blamed Spain. Using the explosion as an excuse for war, on April 25th, they launched the Spanish-American War, despite being weaker than Britain or France. But they were more than capable of handling war-torn Spain. The war spread across Cuba, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. In just months, by August 12th, the U.S. defeated the declining Spain. On December 10th, they signed the famous Treaty of Paris. Spain ceded Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and other colonies to the U.S. These Spanish colonies became American colonies. Thus, the U.S., once colonized, became a colonial empire like European powers. At this point, U.S. territory had expanded to the Pacific. They gained fertile land and a large influx of immigrants. The U.S. was just one step away from becoming a global hegemon, until the two world wars broke out. Without these wars, the U.S. wouldn't have developed so rapidly. In 1914, World War I broke out. The U.S. didn't join right away. During the war's peak, America traded with both sides. Until 1917, the U.S. joined late, as the war was ending. A year later, the German Empire surrendered. The U.S. essentially enjoyed the war's victory spoils. They gained European capital and talent through trade. Most importantly, it boosted their global standing. Post-war, America entered a golden age, but it only lasted until 1929's Great Depression, which dealt a massive blow to the United States. Luckily, Americans elected their greatest president, Roosevelt. Even luckier, World War II began in 1939. Again, the U.S. didn't join WABI II at the start. Instead, they traded closely with Germany and Japan, supplying goods, reviving U.S. industry in the process. What you wanted was far worse and wider than W.O. So the U.S. gained even more benefits this time. Japan's Pearl Harbor attack forced U.S. to join. By then, other nations were battle-worn. The U.S. defeated Japan, ending WABI II as victors. This time, America drained Europe's resources. Post-World War II, U.S. and USSR became world superpowers. This seemed like the new world order. But then the Soviet Union collapsed. The U.S. naturally became the sole superpower. The dollar became the global currency. America led in both military and economy. The U.S. truly became an unrivaled power. Former superpowers couldn't keep up with America.